for future generations. Like, what are you talking about? Why is there so much right-wing media?
Heard of the Wilkses before now, you've certainly heard of the online media industries that they fund. PragerU and the Daily Wire. In 2013, the Wilkses dumped over $6.5 million into PragerU. And in 2015, they funded the creation of the Daily Wire with $4.7 million in seed money.
Shapiro has the money to insulate them, though? Not really. No. No one does. Okay. Here's the thing. That's still short-term thinking, okay? Because climate change and, like, the mass migration that will happen as a consequence of it is still going to fuck everybody up regardless, okay? Like, there's no way to, like, perfectly insulate yourself from global events that will change dramatically the way we exist. Like, how are you going to insulate yourself? Like, you can blast the AC as much as you want, but ultimately you're still eroding our way of existence slowly but surely. You're just kind of stuck indoors, for example, right? Do you see what I mean? It's the Earth trying to get rid of the virus, human beings that we are. Instead of being a symbiotic organism, we're constantly trying to plan it. I mean, I think of that a lot as well, but yeah, there's only so much insulation you can do until, you know, things that you rely on for survival are destroyed, like the food supply. And that gets smaller and smaller. That's like accessible to a smaller and smaller percentage of the population. Shapiro gave the game away in the video. If you live in the first world, you will probably be fine. Even if that's still wrong, in his mind, he and his family will be fine, and that's all that matters to him. Bro, please tell me you're not agreeing with eco-fascists. Wait, what? What do you mean? No, of course I'm not agreeing with eco-fascists. What do you mean? What led you to believe that I agree with eco-fascists? People who say humans are the virus and the earth is responding? What? That's not, I don't think that's at the that's the underlying basis for eco-fascism. Eco-fascists oftentimes attribute the fault to the third world too, when that's not the case. It's the first world that is the problem, our consumption. Yeah, that's a Malthusian eco-fascist view. No, I don't think that it's the solutions that make you a Malthusian eco-fascist. Not the idea that, like, our entire reason for existence is to destroy. I mean, I think that's just pretty correct. But my answer to that is not to, you know, kill half the population, specifically the population of less developed nations that are not even contributing to the crisis as much as First Nations are. Yeah. I mean, we do, in the most reductive sense of the word, we do, by the very nature of existing, behave like a parasitic organism. That part is true. Now, of course, we can change that. But what do you think that, like, building fucking, you know, massive concrete beams on top of a mountain so you can wire electricity into cities is, like, not destroying, you know, not playing a role in destroying certain ecosystems or disrupting them? Of course it is. But I obviously do think that that is a necessity, and there's a way to mitigate some of that disaster. But for some reason, you know, nobody wants to do it. Well, the reason is short-term profit seeking, and all of these companies that all of these companies that make a tremendous amount of money. It's viewing humans and his relationship to Earth as a biological body. It's basically the same line Hitler used when talking about Volkskörper. It's not the core of ecofascism, but it's a common signifier. I'm a little confused. Like saying that human beings are invasive species that destroy the natural ecosystem that it exists under is, I think, just factually accurate. It's how much we can mitigate that I think we should engage in. Not like I've never been the type of person who thinks like we only have a finite amount of resources and we don't have enough to help everybody. As a matter of fact, one thing I talk about regularly is the abundance of our food production and how global famine is something that we absolutely have solved. The only problem is capitalism that renders it impossible to solve it because it's not something that we want to solve. That way, you would never be able to justify food prices and agricultural production in the way that we have it currently. Like, global famine is directly a consequence of profit-seeking individuals making it so that we will never solve the logistical issues. A Malthusian would look at that and go, no, we have finite resources, so we have to kill half the population. Immediately going to that and saying that that's eco-fascism will make you look ridiculous in the eyes of like a normal human that kind of also recognizes that we are doing this. How rectangular are you feeling today? Pretty rectangular. Says that the humans are a virus is cynical as Reddit MCU shit. Every human knows we have to make sure the planet is healthy. The virus is rich people, not regular humans. For fuck's sake, we have zero control power. We all know we need to save the planet to continue to exist. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Because humans are not like any other organism in the sense that we also recognize our own demise, even if we are causing it, which is why our very existence goes against nature. Okay? We are not natural in any shape or form, which is precisely the reason why we are completely aware of our consequences on nature, which is precisely why we could do things to change that outcome, but we refuse to do so because of our current economic and social organization. How is our existence not natural? I mean, we are a part of nature, but Hasan Ecofash hours, like we are a part of nature in the sense that like we still give birth to other humans, blah blah blah, all this shit. But every part of our existence is to basically overcome things that exist in nature without us. What I mean by that is, look at fucking skyscrapers, elevators, cars, planes, electricity, all of these things that we have evolved, all of these things that we've created, fucking vaccines, like we have no other equivalent found in the nature. You have like, I guess, crows and maybe some animals that can use tools and shit, but beyond that, bro, beavers build dams? Yeah, dude, it's the same. Exactly. I mean, yesterday we spent 30 minutes watching Oppenheimer build a fucking atom bomb. You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe not 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Let's continue.
Let me tell you right now, nobody making socialist content has ever gotten that kind of seed money to do something similar.
Cap,
But we'll
I'm actually pumped by George Soros' books.
get back to that later.
What matters right now is what PragerU and the Daily Wire do with all that money. If, like me, you haven't checked in a while, get ready. They push the LGBT grooming narrative and call for increased state violence against those in the queer community. They've said the gay community was, quote, a hell of a lot better off when they were oppressed by the heterosexual monogamists than when they're allied with trans activists, repeating the myth that the biggest threat to queer people is other queer people, not far-right pundits literally calling for them to be imprisoned and executed. They've claimed the 2020 election was fraudulent. No surprises there. They have segments talking about how they wish oh so badly that they could say the N-word, and that shopping at Target makes you, quote, gay and a pervert. That one's new. And they're all for book bans and book burnings because the Bible supposedly says that's okay. That climate change is a hoax, or the science just isn't in yet, so don't do anything. Wonder if the fracking billionaires like that one. And they've recently also casually dropped that they believe women are, quote, disproportionately wrecking the West. And I'm going to stop here because, one, all these examples are from just 1 month, May 2023 or thereabouts, and two, you get the idea.
These online media outlets funded and owned by the Wilkses are broadcasting some of the most untrue, hateful, and oftentimes outright fascist rhetoric. And I'm using that word correctly, you can fight me in the comments. And they're doing so to audiences that are not just massive, but can actually rival more established media. You've seen the obscene subscriber counts of channels like PragerU and Ben Shapiro, but that's only giving you a small idea of these institutions' reach. On Facebook, for example, the Daily Wire often finds a larger audience than the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC News, and CNN combined, according to this NPR article from 2021. Not only do these online media have a huge role in shaping the national dialogue by nurturing and then feeding moral panics up to larger institutions like Fox, who will then encourage far-right vigilantes into acts of stochastic terrorism, these online personalities' influence helps them shape actual real-life laws. Recently, for example, the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh was a big part of the reason that Bill HB 1 passed in Florida, a bill banning gender-affirming healthcare for those under 18. So, you know, money well spent for the Wilkses. But not just by the Wilkses. Although the Kochs aren't direct investors in either PragerU or the Daily Wire based on what we could find online, one of the Kochs' nonprofits, Americans for Prosperity, and don't worry, we'll get back to them later, have campaigned on behalf of Ron DeSantis, and he gave over $100,000 to the Daily Wire last year. But that's obviously not all.
Yeah. Food post scarcity, sure, but with things like electronics, things like phones, computers, cars would need to cost a shit ton of more. In order to give, for example, cobalt miners in Africa their fair share of profit, finite sources are too cheap for the first world. And our cheap tech is resulting in the poverty of billions. Maybe one day your vision of post-scarcity is possible. We're nowhere near that. How do you reconcile the need for technology for social cause, but the source of that innovation coming from capitalism? I don't have to reconcile that at all because that's not true. The premise here is faulty. The notion that like capitalism is a source for technological innovation is not only ahistoric, but completely laughable. Most of the innovation that you see under capitalism revolves around profit seeking and in many respects, complete evisceration of genuine innovation. Innovation requires long-term goals. If you are short-term profit driven, a lot of the things that you would choose to innovate completely are shut out from the market. One great example of this is pharmaceutical innovation, right? Novel chemical compounds, oftentimes people think, are created by profit-seeking pharmaceutical corporations in the Western world. That's not true. In terms of per capita novel chemical compound innovation, most of that is already still conducted in publicly funded research facilities like colleges and whatnot. Okay. But also beyond that, America actually falls short of plenty of other places where there's more public funding for that sort of innovation. America is just the largest country, the most powerful country, the wealthiest country on earth. So there's a lot of brain drain. And even with all of that, other countries are still better. And their pharmaceutical research is still better when we look at per capita novel chemical compound innovation. Americans love playing fast and loose and talk about the totality because of how big this country is and how wealthy this country is, not realizing that there are significantly more efficient nations when it comes to novel chemical compound generation, okay, or innovation. A lot of the American innovation in the pharmaceutical sector revolves around finding new delivery mechanisms so they can keep sitting on IP, keep sitting on patents, okay? You're dropping like 10 million frames? Wait, what? All right, I have no idea what you're saying. But one thing I will tell you is this. A lot of the medical R&D, a lot of the medical research and development is either A, marketing costs. A lot of the spending on medical innovation is on the marketing side, new sales techniques and the like. But then the R&D almost always goes to new delivery mechanisms so you can keep sitting on a patent for some kind of pharmaceutical product that you purchased from one of these research facilities that was publicly funded originally. What do I mean by this? If you find a new way to deliver the same exact chemical compound, you can extend your patent by oftentimes, I think it's like, 7 years? Another way that innovations are cut short, for example, in the medical field, is when the patent of a particular kind of medication is slated to run out, which means that now there will be generic versions of it, which means that the patent holder will no longer be able to maintain the same profit margins. When that happens, the pharmaceutical corporation will oftentimes drop any kind of other healthcare ailments that this medication can be good for. They'll drop all the R&D on that field because they recognize that the pharmaceutical product is no longer their own, is no longer solely held onto by them. One of the greatest, and this is a bit of a reductive argument, but one of the greatest examples of like life-changing innovation coming not necessarily from for-profit driven capitalist sectors, but instead from publicly funded research is the military's R&D into creating the internet. The internet was not created as a product to be consumed by capital owners, and yet it has been the most innovative product that has the most innovative technological achievement that has truly changed the lives of every single person on the planet. If we had a profit-driven, short-term profit-seeking mentality towards that kind of innovation, in that when scientists were working on the internet, it would have never been made, because there was plenty of failures that happened for many, many years before a viable product was created. Okay? I've been working at JPM for almost 10 years. Capitalism is not efficient, not even speculative financial capitalism. All profit-driven initiatives are always cost cuts. For chat, employees are considered costs. Working here made me even more of a socialist. Yeah. Pharmaceutical corporations do not innovate because they want to heal people. They innovate because they want to make money. And if there's some kind of medical solution that does not make money for them, they will no longer research it. They will shelve it because they care about profits. This is how it works. And when I describe it to you on these terms, you come to the conclusion that this is truly fucking evil, right? Well, it's not evil. It's just capitalism. That's just how it works. So the notion that, profit-seeking initiatives have actually created technological innovation is silly. If it has improved your life in any meaningful way, some kind of new technological achievement has improved your life in any kind of way, it's purely out of sheer luck that it has. Yeah. Pharma scientists here, they don't even innovate. They let university and government do 95% of the work, and then they buy the patent, and then they sit on it for as many years as they can. Exactly. A recent example of what you're saying, explained by John Green.
Under control, but I'm really angry. So tuberculosis is the world's leading cause of infectious disease death, both now and historically. Keep it under control, Green. Which is especially infuriating because it is curable. And I am angry because 1 week from today should be a tremendous moment for the progress of human health. Because the 20-year patent on the critical multi-drug resistant tuberculosis medication bedaquiline should be expiring 1 week from today. Except that Johnson & Johnson is using immoral and unjust tactics to try to evergreen that patent and make it last another 4 years. In those 4 years, according to TB experts I've talked to, up to 6 million people will be denied treatment for multi-drug resistant tuberculosis because they can't afford bedaquiline. If J&J abandons these ridiculous efforts, millions more people will be able to access treatment. If you work at J&J, tell your bosses you will not accept. Okay, I'm trying to keep it under control, but I'm really angry. So tuberculosis is the world's leading cause of infectious disease death, both now and historically. Keep it under control, Green. Which is especially infuriating because it is curable. And I am angry because 1 week from today should be a tremendous...
Yeah, there you go. Whoa, I got up too fast. Holy shit. Ooh, my head is spinning. This is not just one drug. This is every drug. If you're not profitable enough to treat you, your medicine will not be made. Yeah. It's also telling you the only way to subvert short-term innovation motives within capitalism is to amass a disgusting amount of exploitative wealth like Elon and burn your own money in furtherance of longer-term goals. SpaceX failing the launch for years, Tesla being unprofitable for years, etc. This actually caused a response by J&J on Twitter. Yeah, the funnier version of this. Okay, here, let's watch the full thing. The funnier thing is that, like, this is similar to the insulin situation with pharmaceutical corporations. Like, it shouldn't be up to like a fucking YouTuber to yell at a company for the company to respond, and then then everyone to go, oh, well, see, it worked. Because it's happening for tuberculosis, and they just wanted to add on 4 additional years of profit to their fucking margins, right? But, like, it's been going on for as long as they've maintained this patent. So think about all of the deaths that are attributed to that. Think about that. And this is something that you can say about every single kind of medication. And the irony is, and here is the funniest part about this, every nerd who has learned Econ 101, okay, every nerd with a finance degree or any kind of like introductory to micro and macroeconomics class under their belt, recognizes this reality. It is taught in fucking schools. Okay? Even from a neoclassical perspective, you still recognize that pharmaceuticals and medicine and healthcare is supposed to be an industry that is heavily regulated by the government and not for profit in general because of a concept known as inelastic demand. It's not like this is not a Marxist concept, okay? Inelastic demand implies that if you do not have this product, you die. So no matter what, you are going to try and receive this product. The demand is inelastic. It's always going to be there. And in instances where there's inelastic demand, you can change the supply as much as you want or drive up the cost for profit every single year. And that's precisely what pharmaceutical corporations in the United States of America have done. They can't do this in other places because other countries, unlike the United States of America, buy their medication in bulk and go, fuck no, we're just gonna purchase this for this price. Okay? But Americans are so fucking stupid, and this country is designed in a way to basically put profits over the interests of people, that we are one of the few nations on the fucking planet that has unique patents. Okay? We have distribution patents that are carved out on top of the rest of the planet. US and Canada have different patents than the rest of the world. In some instances, Japan as well. Okay? Why do you think that is the case? Why do you think that like one distributor will buy a patent for the rest of the fucking planet while simultaneously the US and Canada patents are separate? It's because when you maintain the distribution rights to pharmaceuticals in the United States, you make a significant amount more money. So pretty much akin to the global distribution rights. Because we pay 10 times more than the rest of the fucking world does. It's crazy to me.
A week from today marks a huge moment of progress for human health as the patent on the drug bedaquiline expires, allowing less expensive
Gotta pee again, and then I'm gonna get on the
versions to be
treadmill and
produced
start
that
walking.
Can cure far more people living with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. Wait, what's that? Oh, well, that's unfortunate. What will actually happen next Tuesday is that the company Johnson & Johnson will begin enforcing a secondary patent, thus denying access to bedaquiline to around 6 million people over the next 4 years. And that's where we come in, Nerdfighteria, because I really think that if we can understand this problem together and make a compelling case to Johnson & Johnson that they are pursuing a bad business strategy, we can save a lot of lives. But first, some history. Tuberculosis is the world's deadliest infectious disease. It killed about 30,000 people last week, which is especially horrifying given that it is usually curable, generally with a cocktail of drugs given daily over 4 months. But drug-resistant TB that isn't cured by that cocktail is a growing problem. So between the 1940s and the 1960s, we developed and synthesized 8 different classes of drugs that could treat tuberculosis. And then between the 1960s and the end of the 20th century, no new drugs were developed to treat tuberculosis for the simple reason that we stopped investing money in TB treatments because it was no longer a problem in rich countries. Now, for the record, if we continue this strategy of global health, caring about infectious disease only when it affects rich countries, we will continue to see more and more drug resistance until eventually a strain of disease emerges that we can't cure, which will spread globally and cause a pandemic, which will affect rich countries, and that's one reason to end TB now. Another reason is that all human lives are equally valuable, and it's completely unacceptable that this year 1.6 million people will die of a curable disease. Right, so we had these lost decades where we didn't discover any new TB treatments. But then the incentives changed. Government started to invest much more in research and even in like funding trials, making it more interesting to pharmaceutical companies, and eventually Johnson & Johnson developed a new drug called bedaquiline. Now, most of the money that went into researching and discovering bedaquiline came from the public, it came from governments, but Johnson & Johnson did take some risks, did invest some money, full credit, and that's why in 2003 they got to file a patent for the drug compound bedaquiline. Then in 2007 they filed a secondary patent for bedaquiline with this added fumarate salt. Now, one expert recently explained this to me as filing a patent for a pen cap that goes with your pen. Like a pen cap makes your pen work better and last longer, but it's not the pen. And indeed, Johnson & Johnson always knew that they were going to have to develop a pen cap for their pen. They waited until 2007 precisely so that they could extend the length of their patent. So bedaquiline becomes available to the public, and it has saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Like a couple months ago, I was in Sierra Leone and spoke with 2 young women who were dying of tuberculosis, who were on their deathbed when they received this new cocktail of drugs containing bedaquiline. They quickly recovered. Today, they are cured. They
That's
are
insane.
home with their families, and they are attending school. That's the power of this drug. But while the price of it has dropped over the last decade, it is still
Truly curable.
way too expensive for many communities. Like a study by MSF indicated that if generics were allowed to be produced globally, the price of bedaquiline would drop by 67% from $1.50 a pill to 50 cents per pill. And that should be happening next Tuesday because the original 2003 patent for bedaquiline expires on July 18th, 2023. But unfortunately, in many countries, Johnson & Johnson is using that secondary patent on the pen cap to extend their exclusivity for 4 more years. During those 4 years, experts estimate that up to 6 million people who would have access to bedaquiline in a world of generics won't be able to afford it, and most of those people will die. So if it sounds like I'm angry, that's because I'm angry. But I think we can make change here. Thanks to lawsuits filed by TB survivors led by 2 extraordinary young women, courts have decided that the pen cap is not adequate innovation, and so they have not granted the patent, which means that there are, right now, generic manufacturers ready to go making bedaquiline. Unfortunately, they won't be able to distribute those generic medications to many countries with a high TB burden, including Sierra Leone. And that's where I'm hoping we come in, because we need to explain to Johnson & Johnson that this is a bad
Can't do
decision.
it, man.
Like, Johnson & Johnson is not some evil monolith. It's a company made
Yes, it
out
is.
of people, and I genuinely believe that most of those people want their work to make the world better. I mean, J&J's corporate credo begins, "We believe our first responsibility is to the patients," and I want them to live up.
This is the problem with, like, you know, being pro-capitalist, even at this point. It's like they don't give a shit. You explain that they don't give a shit, and then you're like trying to appeal to their good nature while recognizing, but just somehow simultaneously forgetting that they have, for the past, decades that they've owned this patent, led to like basically genocide numbers of people dying. Purely for profit. Like, it's not if you consider that the next 4 years lead to 6 million people dying from curable, treatable disease. Okay? Then you recognize that all those other years, so many people fucking died. They did that. We don't need to have it be this way. But it is impossible to dream of a future where, these corporations aren't operating in a profit-seeking motive.
Up to that credo. So there are links in the video info below and in a pinned comment to contact Johnson & Johnson and let them know that you find this attempt to evergreen their patent reprehensible and completely out of line with their credo. There are also links to J&J's social media. Tag them, share the news that bedaquiline's patent should be expiring, saving so many lives, but instead is being immorally evergreened by Johnson & Johnson. Tell your friends about this injustice, tell your family, tell the internet, because the only reason Johnson & Johnson exists.
Yeah, this got corporate PR from Johnson & Johnson to give a big W to the Green brothers, but also to themselves. Enough stink happened that they probably did a cost a cost assessment where they were like, well, the good PR that we can get from making this patent free for the next 4 years probably is better than maintaining the patent and like trying to squeeze out 4 extra years of profit out of it. And then that cost benefit analysis led them to behave this way. But it also still forgets the reality that so many people died. You know what I mean? It sucks.